Welcome back. I know for our community members, it's been a pretty quick turnaround, but thanks for coming back and for navigating through the March snow. We did the best we could today, certainly. So, does everybody have a packet? I think we got some information, just kind of agenda and some of the slides. We got copies up there if you need that. So we'll do just a quick recap of last week's meeting. But the point today is really to transition then into talking about our performance arts spaces. And so that's really what we want to focus on. We have a new group of experts here who live in those spaces every day. So thank you all for coming to be able to give this important feedback as we're working through this process. So it's been really important for community members to be able to get some subject matter expert opinions. So good to see everybody here. So again, we're going to go through most of the Performing Arts Center conversation will be around this building, will be around North, and what opportunities we have here as we're moving forward, and then how does that fit within our larger scheme. But we'll certainly look at what we have at Kimball, along with what we have at some other communities that have similar performing arts spaces, similar school sizes, that type of thing as we're moving forward. So. Any questions on that? All right, do we want to do introductions so everybody knows with a new set of subject matter experts? We should probably do introductions quick so everybody kind of knows who's who. So why don't we start up here with Taylor.
Taylor Reitz, community member.
Excellent. All right, good to see you.
Kim Nguyen. I guess I was saying to Karen I'm a troublemaker, but I'm also a parent.
That's for sure. Karen Bowen, retired, whatever. Oh, past OASD board member.
Will Depuus, have 4 kids in the district this year, 3 next year.
I'm Cable Helmrecht. I'm the Director of Recreations for the Oshkosh Recreation Department.
Tom Hanson, I'm State Manager of Kimball Auditorium.
I guess I am. I live here, but I have a graduate and 2 kids still in the district.
Great.
Jay Gibson, community member, 2 kids in the district.
Herb Berenson, former choral director at West High School.
I'm Kirsten Martin. I'm a student at Oshkosh West High School.
Great.
Kay Weber, OASD employee.
Jennifer Henseline, the drama teacher at North.
Dan Singer, band director at West.
Randy Zentner, former local music director here at Oshkosh North.
Brian Wilson, band director at West.
Bridget Duffy Ulrich, current choral director here.
All right.
Brad Jdarski, Oshkosh West Athletics and Activities. Craig Leader, same at North.
All right. Excellent. You guys want to introduce yourselves? Everybody knows you.
Sure. Drew Neehans, I'm the Director of Business Services. Jim Fox, I'm the Director of Facilities.
All right. Excellent. All right. So we know who's in the room. So why don't we get started? Again, we'll do a little bit of a recap from the last meeting, but most importantly today, we want to jump into our Performing Arts Center spaces. So with that, I'll take it over to Clint.
Thank you. And again, for some of the new group, again, I'm Clint Selly with Bray Architects, and then Nate Considine also with Bray Architects here today. All right, so as Brian said, we'll kind of quickly go through a little bit of the feedback from the last meeting, kind of a brief wrap up of the indoor facility. We'll introduce the Performing Arts Center, look a little bit at some precedents, again, kind of go through a similar process of defining the needs and goals for the facility, look at some initial options, talk a little bit about site, and then again, we'll hopefully break into our small group. So again, we're like I've kind of said over and over, we're continuing to track these. Again, I think we'll continually kind of come back to these to make sure we're checking them off or providing as much information as we can. Kind of looking at the feedback from number 3, again, kind of taking a look at a number of these. It was sort of interesting. I guess I coming out of the meeting, I didn't didn't kind of get the sense we were, as many of the groups were on that same side, but it did seem like a lot of the groups were kind of pointing to sort of an all-in-one, and maybe with the festival grounds kind of being a little bit more of the ideal location. But again, I'll let you guys kind of read through at your leisure, not specifically picking off a number of these, but kind of as I read through it, it was sort of interesting to see that. A number of also comments about, again, timing is going to be critical, and is 2016 or 2026 too far? Is it too far away? Is it too soon? So again, we're going to have to continue kind of to balance that discussion as we go through. As I said, a lot of great comments on the site last time. I think you guys did a great job. Again, not playing Realtor or Zillow too much. I think some good comments about parking being really critical if we are going to have this be a focal point, something that both the community and the larger state are going to utilize as an amenity. That's probably not an area to go small on. But again, really great comments and really appreciative of this. So again, we're going to kind of transition today away from the indoor athletics and then move on to Performing Arts Center. So hopefully this is something, I know as we kind of kicked off the last subject is, well, what the heck is an indoor athletic center, and how big is it? And I know it's hopefully, or I'm sure for many of you, it's sort of a challenging thing to kind of understand and know what it is. Hopefully, I'm guessing most of us have been in an auditorium or performing arts center at some point in time to see your child presentation or whatever, or go see a play. So again, we've talked a little bit about North and West, but again, just to kind of reiterate, North currently is about 544 seats. There's very small dressing rooms, there's a lack of storage, there's a lack of lobby space, and again, I think from the very first meeting, our subject matter experts kind of spoke at length of the challenges of this particular facility. Alberta Kimball, it's actually surprising that's a pretty large number, and looking at the pictures, I never would guess that capacity is that big. It seats over 1,400 people. There are some dressing room spaces. There is some nice space for storage and stagecraft. In terms of space-wise, probably the one limitation here is the amount of lobby space. We're really kind of dumping people out into a relatively small hallway. So, in terms of the kind of the footprint of this facility, that probably would be kind of one of the challenges that currently exists with that building. Again, a few pictures for those of you that maybe have never been in this space. Again, kind of a nice audience view. I would kind of describe the configuration of the stage here as this is a little bit more kind of what they call in the round, in that it's this kind of very sweeping, kind of fanned out configuration for the seating. More modern high school auditoriums have more of a straight out look. Again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this necessarily. It does make for some of the side seating to have kind of a challenging angle, but again, it does do a nice job of getting a large number of people very close to the stage. Yes, sir.
The correct term would be fan-shaped. In the round would be the stage would be in the middle. A performance space would be in the middle. So we don't want to start confusing people with what really is there. So and fan-shaped is possible.
Yep. Just point is, if you look at probably the last 10 years of auditoriums of high schools built in the state, and I'm not aware of many of them in this configuration. They're more often than not more of a straight out configuration. So again, some nice photographs of the overall building, inside space. Bray has been very fortunate, and again, we are showing Bray projects here. By all means, if there's other ones that you would like us to take a look at, we'd be happy to explore and bring those to the table. But we feel very fortunate that we've done a number of recent projects in the state, and I guess have heard good things. But starting with Ashwaubenon, it's about 730 seat auditorium. Again, most, and again, not to make generalizations, but sort of starting with the stage, most high school stages are roughly 100 feet wide by 35-ish feet to the proscenium opening. And then there generally is a thrust, what we say, where the stage thrusts out beyond the proscenium opening, and that ranges again from 12 to 15 feet. So sort of starting with this kind of general shape, that's fairly typical. And then again, the seating, in this case, it's less of a fan shape and more of a straight out projection. So again, from a spectator perspective, the viewing angles of the stage tend to be a little bit better. We believe in that configuration. Again, this had nice dressing room accommodations. They also did have include a green room in this for if they had any kind of special speakers that might be included. Nice space again for stagecraft and storage, set construction. And then this one did have a fly loft, so an extension of the stage up. I believe we were right around 50 feet high for the stage in this facility, and this did have an orchestra pit as well. A fairly good size lobby. I think I have some pictures. Nice size lobby. You can see this kind of generally set up for some type of cocktail situation beforehand. This was a unique project. This was a partnership with the community and the school district. The village funded the project via a referendum, and then the school district is responsible for ongoing maintenance. So my understanding is even though it is attached to their high school, they can serve beverages, alcoholic beverages in this facility. Nice dressing room area as well. This is a look then inside the auditorium itself. Again, this is a stadia seating in the back, so it steps up in the back, so we get, again, good viewing angles. Again, without getting too much into the weeds on this, some things we'll need to think about is, and I'm sure our subject matter experts will acknowledge very important is the orchestra shell within that, which really, again, helps to funnel the sound out to our occupants. Here's a look at, there is and I have some more pictures showing this, but there is an orchestra pit, and in this case the cover is on the pit, so the whole stage is usable. And then you can see there's little slats here, so in this case if the orchestra was down there, the sound would kind of filter out the front portion of that. So that can function either with the pit closed or with the pit open. Winneconne, so just up the road a little bit. This was a project where when they built the high school originally, they had planned to kind of plug an auditorium in kind of the corner of the building. So if you know that facility, this is their Cafeteria Commons. So you walk down kind of a back hallway, and then there's a little bit of a lobby there, and then into the auditorium. This one was actually, I think, in the ones I've done, one of the more generous ones in terms of dressing rooms and green rooms, and the wardrobe storage area is rather large. So in terms of some of the back of house stuff, this one worked out pretty well. I would say from the perspective of this one kind of functioning independently from the rest of the school, you can kind of imagine that if we're going to allow people into this, given where the lobby is, it's kind of central to the building. It's a little harder to kind of separate the auditorium from the rest of the school. So, if you're going to kind of compare this to the Ashwaubenon model, where the auditorium is very separate from the rest of the building, I think there's a lot more opportunity to kind of separate functions a little more effectively. But again, a very nice facility. This does have, an orchestra pit, but it's more of a modified orchestra pit, meaning this isn't the full level down where we need an elevator and stairs. This is dropped down about 25-ish inches below the lowest level of the seating. So we took a little bit different approach here, mainly due to cost, to try to implement something, but not exactly the same pit that we saw at Ashwaubenon. Again, this shows kind of the fly loft extending up. This one, I believe, was again somewhere between 55 or 50 to 55 feet in height. Slinger, another recent. This is 800 seat capacity. Again, many of the same bells and whistles as Ashwaubenon. A nice, generous lobby. This one, I think, again, sets up very well to be either integrated in with the school or a separate function for the auditorium itself. You can see here a really nice presence and sort of front of face for the facility from the public side. A nice, generous lobby space again. Another cool thing we did create in this building was this, again, was an addition onto the existing building. And as a result of the addition, we did kind of create a little bit of a music commons for the classrooms that were there, which, again, just kind of a flexible space outside of the classroom for the students and staff to utilize. This, again, was a full pit, so it has an elevator. It has a set of two different ways you can get out of it, via a stair or a quasi-stair ladder. Sound porch as part of the seating, and then the separate sound booth and light and spotlight areas up above. And then finally, I just wanted to show this one, and I'm sure I didn't grab the capacity. It's right around 800 seats. But just to give you a little bit of an example, this was the existing space. So wonderful seating concept with good look. It's hard to fault them for why they wanted to change. But again, kind of converting an old, antiquated auditorium space, giving it kind of a freshening look. And I mean, really, that picture I think looks very reminiscent of a lot of the new auditoriums that we created. But again, just showing an example where we can make it look better, make it look good. So any questions about those? Yes?
Is 800 capacity, it seems like that's the norm.
It is for many of them. Again, what we've seen is, again, this style and configuration of auditorium. What I've always been told is if you're at 150 feet away from the performer, you can still see facial expressions and get a sense of it. Once you move further away from that, you start to lose that intimacy. So right around kind of that 800 is starting to get where you're far enough back where you're still able to achieve that. When you get bigger than that, we need to generally go to a balcony. I believe, and I'm not sure of all of the logistics, but I think from a licensing perspective, I've heard too that once you start to get bigger than 800 from traveling groups, there's some addition. Maybe some of the subject matter experts are aware of that, but we've been told too that sometimes there's additional licensing that's required for those traveling performers.
Isn't necessarily the traveling performers, it's even your local groups. Like, for instance, if the high school puts on a musical, the royalties are based partly on the number of tickets sold. Some companies base it on total capacity for the room. Some of them will allow you to negotiate with them about how many tickets you're actually going to sell. So, for instance, if you had a balcony, you could cut off the balcony and say your capacity of the room is 800 instead of 1,200.
Similar to what, I mean, you see that in sporting events where they'll cap that. But yeah, I think again for those reasons, I think that's why a lot of districts or communities or school districts tend to go to that 800. Is it just seems to be kind of a good amount. There are others. Sun Prairie built their original high school at 1,200. Now they're building a new high school, and it's closer to the 800. So again, I think it depends on what the needs are. If we go back to what you currently have, if the Kimball is over 1,400, do we build another 1,400, or do we build something maybe a smaller size to or bigger, whatever the case may be, to kind of accommodate that. Yes, sir.
Can I point out that Sun Prairie, they're not replacing their school, they're adding a second school, so they wouldn't
Yes.
need to have the same capacity as their first school, because it's gonna be 2 working auditoriums in the district.
Yes.
That may be why they went to 800 instead of 1,200.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
They're going from 1 high school to 2 high schools.
On the capacity of the schools that you showed, I assume those are all smaller high schools than North is in terms of student enrollment?
I would have to double check that.
Slinger's about the same as North.
Yeah, I think so.
Is that big? Okay.
Yeah, Ashwaubenon's a pretty good sized high school.
Ashwaubenon's a little under 1,000.
Where's North right now?
1250.
1229. Third Friday count.
Greg's showing off tonight.
That was January, he's just not up to date.
I'm curious if the reasoning behind setting the capacity of Alberta Kimball at 1450 or whatever, if that, does anybody recall what that reasoning was? Because I'm curious what the difference would be in how we apply a similar reason. Oh, okay.
Old people remember that it was, in fact, the university used to use it. Or I saw Pablo Casals in the Alberta Kimball. It was the university. Well, it wasn't just the university, but everybody used it for everything. It was more of a community thing, and then I was just wondering, as a matter of fact, and about the alcohol thing, because when I was on the board, they passed a rule that you could not serve alcohol in any school facility, and Alberta Kimball was considered to be it. And it was a real problem for the Oshkosh Symphony.
That still stands, yes.
Okay, there you go. So, but it's still, Alberta Kimball is still considered a community facility, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. Interesting.
It was originally called the Civic Auditorium.
Right, that's true, thank you.
But even if, correct me if I'm wrong, but even when North does their shows at the Grand, they don't serve alcohol.
No, they don't.
That's probably true, okay, yeah.
Yeah. True.
I guess subject matter experts, again, in terms of precedents, any other, again, facilities you're aware of or that you've been to, whether, again, we can bring it to the group next time we meet, that.
I think one to look at would be Fond du Lac High School.
Yep.
It was built in '01, and they do have a balcony, and they have a pit. They have a private entrance to the pit from the hallway in the music department behind the stage. It'd be good to see what that all looks like.
Yep, and actually Bray did that one too, so.
Sir?
Yes, sir.
Are we at all interested in comparing the March Theater on campus in terms of capacity, size, features, given that it's one that I've been into, so I think it's been renamed.
I used to run it, so if you have any questions about it, I could probably tell you. It's a 500-seat capacity auditorium, and that is specifically because in the university system, 501 seats is not considered a classroom, and it requires totally different funding. So that's why it's 500 seats. It has a very nice stage, it has a very nice workshop, it has wonderful dressing rooms, it also has an experimental theater attached to it. It is totally unavailable for use by the community.
So it's a completely different set of rules and constraints.
Mm-hmm.
Can they serve alcohol there?
Actually,
Yes, they can.
Mhm.
Sorry.
I had some.
All right. Any other, again, facilities that would be worth?
I mean, I guess I want to know, does Alberta Kimball need to be rebuilt, or does it just need help? I mean, obviously North needs to something different, but does Alberta Kimball need to be completely rebuilt, or just fixed?
Kimball has recently undergone severe modernization. A lot of these systems have been brought up to date. there are some things to do, but a lot of Kimball's problems are pretty much unfixable. The fan shape, for instance, is terrible for acoustics, terrible for sight lines. The fly loft is too short. And those are inherent building problems that I suppose, you could fix, but it would require an enormous amount of money.
And the lobby.
Well, and the lobby. The lobby could use more amenities. I mean, it doesn't look like it, but it's really a huge lobby. It's just really long and narrow. So, I mean, there's a lot of space in it. It could be improved, and it would possibly even be easy to extend it out, but it needs more restrooms. Drastically, there are not enough restrooms for the capacity of the building. It could use like concession stands or a coat check, things like that it does not have at all.
I can add to that. Often when the Kimball is used by outside groups like the Miss Oshkosh and Miss Wisconsin pageant, dance studios, etc., they also use music classrooms, especially choir and orchestra. So those rooms don't have storage where their things can be put away. So every year we have damage and things lost and stolen, broken, etc., because we have nowhere to put those things. And also those three classrooms, the music program at West High School outgrew that space 20, 25 years ago. So we are crammed in there with bad acoustics, no storage, etc. So that, for the kids' education, would be good to do some things to the auditorium, like lobby, bathrooms, etc., but expand that into the music department since it's used daily by the students and by the outside groups that come in.
Yeah, storage is a huge problem.
Huge.
It looks like there's a lot there.
So when you say that, what you would really want is a room for community groups to go to. You don't really want to have to take everything down in a classroom every time a community group uses it.
Well,
the position of the music wing to the auditorium is great because it offers immediate access to backstage. In an ideal world, I think Dan would really like to see a new music wing built and the old music wing incorporated into Kimball's operation.
Or a simple addition around the music wing to address that. So like the orchestra room, when these outside groups come in, we don't take anything down because there's nowhere for it to go.
Right.
We've also been told, oh, put it somewhere else. There is no somewhere else. So Yukiko Grind tends to put things up against the wall and then put her chair stacked in front of it as a barricade so people can't get to her cellos and basses. But that doesn't always work. Sometimes those get shoved into there. I know in the choir room, people who have used the room have gone into storage rooms, into Miss Meyer's office, into her desk, and used things from there, even though they shouldn't be in there. Things are closed. There's no way to secure any of our stuff. We've had band instruments stolen in the 15 years I've been there. Not many, I think like 2 or 3, because basically we have to cram 100 instruments into a space that maybe should have 30 in it. So that's an issue, beyond just performance space, but is related to the performance space.
Like storage alone wouldn't do it because you don't want to have to undo your room every time Alberta Kimball is rented out.
Correct.
Right. Okay, thank you.
It's convenient too that there's a lot of like green space on two of the 4 sides of the music department, so you wouldn't necessarily have to tear anything down. You can just build around it.
Right. And a few years ago, I did meet with Aaron Cole, Stan Mack, Jim Fox, and a couple other people about an idea I had of adding a science lab and classroom and expanding the music department into that green space to help science and to help music with our issues. And the people who met thought it was all great ideas, but didn't know when to do it or how to pay for it.
All right, well, it seems like we're at kind of this already transitions slide. I know Nate's been taking feverish notes over there, so I think we'll have a lot more to add here to Alberta Kimball. But again, I think one of the things we want to kind of transition to now is again, what is the need in the community? So again, I think first and foremost, the district and the community needs multiple PACs, number one. Secondarily, again, Alberta Kimball serves the district and community well. There are some updates needed, there's some space needed, and again, more than what we described here. Again, North, this list probably could go on and on, but just again, it's mainly used as a study hall lecture lab. Individual performances practices are utilized. It's not used for performances or on a very limited basis. Again, so something is needed on the north side for student and community performance. What we, again, generically, and I'm sure this number changes, but what we kind of generically, I think, set for a target was that 750 to 850 range. And then again, providing support spaces for both the district and community usage. So again, in terms of a simple, oversimplified generalization of kind of the needs, and again, this is a little bit of the subject matter, does this kind of encapsulate what we think the needs are, or is this too simplified? And again, I don't want to get too much into the weeds of pits and fly lofts. We'll get into that in a little more detail in a little bit, but just generalizations. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I would like to comment about the capacity. My thought is that that's actually low. And I know we're limited with sight lines and distances and stuff, but we got to remember that this is potentially going to be used for, say, the new elementary school that replaces Webster and other elementary schools to do their programs. We need to make sure that that is going to fit in there, that the audience, this capacity will be big enough for that event. Because if we make it too small, then we're right back where we were, but spent a lot of money to do it. So in my opinion, I think 850 is low. I think it should be closer to 1,000. Not the 1,400 that Kimball has, but I think 1,000 is something that would better serve our schools and community.
We just toured Winneconne a week and a half ago, and they said for their elementary concerts in Winneconne in their brand new auditorium, they have to go by grade level, so it's like their first grade classrooms have a concert, and then so I mean, it works, but it's not quite the same thing. So it's just something to consider. I don't know if anyone has done bigger than that size that we could talk to or ask about. Who has built like a balcony recently, but it's just something to maybe do more research on.
Sure.
And the district's plan obviously is combining elementary and middle schools and making them larger. So they're going to be larger and they're going to need more space to do those performances, regardless of whether, if we have 13 elementary schools, they're still all going to do performances. But if you have 800 kids in an elementary school, we're going to have to do those performances someplace.
Currently, the larger schools, almost everybody uses Kimball, say for the holiday concerts. The larger schools years ago had to stop doing a concert for the entire school and cut it in half, so that they did very, very low-level elementary and then middle elementary, because even Kimball is too small for them.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, you're talking about like Traeger, which was 500, which everybody thought was big. So, we went to K2 and then 3-5. They used to split it. They used to do K2 and then swap in the same night. But that became such a nightmare of people trying to come in at the same time as people going out. It was horrible.
Yeah, there have been various attempts to cure that problem, none of which worked particularly well.
Is there any auditorium space going into Bell Phillips?
No, there is not. We're trying to treat the cafeteria commons to more on a presentation style, not a, you know, formal auditorium performance space, but we did design the cafeteria for more informal presentations, or if there was maybe a smaller event, but no, it is not an auditorium.
So on that subject, so when Val Phillips Middle School opens, you're gonna have, say, the band community of Current, Webster, and Merrill combining, and they need a place where they can have their 7-8 band concert, or their 6-7-8 band concert. So they're going to need 1,000 seats to accommodate that, which they, you know, assuming that was built here, then they would come over and do that here. I wish there was one there, but we're beyond that now. So I think this capacity does need to go up.
And we're getting rid of the only other really functioning auditorium in the district when you tear down Webster Stanley and get rid of that auditorium. That's really the only other functioning auditorium in the district.
Is that actually settled though? I mean, because it'd be great if we didn't have to.
I think it would be great too. I think they would keep that space, but.
That space is very special.
Yeah.
Because
It's also very small.
That's
well, how many seats are in it?
I don't, it was reduced a little bit during the remodeling that they did a couple of years ago, so I'm not sure what it is. I think it's around 400.
It's too small, huh?
Do you know, Jim?
I think it's, don't quote me on this, 5'10", I think, rather 5'15". We actually added quite a few seats. Either way, as we described, our plans moving forward, that auditorium will be torn down with the rest of the school.
And that stage is very small. There's no wing space, there's no fly space, there's no dressing rooms. It's just a very small stage.
So what's happening at the new middle school is kind of like what Traeger has, right?
Less. Almost nothing.
Less.
We have a cafetorium, is what they call it, a Traeger?
A Traeger, yeah.
Yes, that's what I meant.
I mean, is that sufficient for the middle school? It feels like it as a parent, but I don't know as a teacher if that's.
It's better than the other schools.
Cafetorium is better than nothing, but it's still bad.
Okay.
Is it functional?
Kind of.
What works?
Auditoriums.
Well, sorry, what works specific to the Carl Traeger site?
There's a stage that basically fits the performing group. It's not deep enough, it's not wide enough, the lights are insufficient, it's limited capacity for auditorium seating, for audience seating. The acoustics are pretty terrible. Anything that happens during a school day, the entire building can hear. It displaces study hall, it displaces lunch, because that's where lunch happens. It's cafetoriums, this is my opinion, should never happen. Yeah, it's just a bad idea. You wouldn't make in a new school, you wouldn't build a gym that doubles as the cafeteria. I know a lot of older schools, you have to do that. It's the only space you have. But at a new school, you wouldn't do that. So we shouldn't also do that with our performance space. Cafetorium is bad.
At the time when we designed that, it was really good and special, you know.
One of those hot items.
What do we know?
Different era.
Different era, different time.
Right. And that's just my opinion as a performing arts teacher, and having conducted bands in that space, and performed in that space, and attended concerts in that space.
Any more comments about the capacity? Again, we'll do a little more research on 1,000 and what that means. So then, again, kind of flipping that a little bit, so defining the goals. So again, this is a shared use facility. I think learning our lesson a little bit, and I don't know that this is maybe as much as the previous topic we were talking about, but again, OASD events will have scheduling priority of this facility. Again, we'll rework the seating, but you know, what is the largest event? What would potentially be community needs? And again, the likelihood that we will require a balcony for if we're approaching 1,000 or likely approaching. I guess this is a question, is this a facility that's going to have a full fly loft to accommodate high-level production? So,
Yes.
Do we want this to have an orchestra pit?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
We obviously want a nice lobby space for pre and post production and congregation. We want, again, dressing rooms to support community and school usage, and then adequate storage and stagecraft or set design construction areas within the building. Again, in terms of goals, is there anything, again, there's some corrections here, but is there anything we're missing?
I just like to say that everybody thinks that, you know, of Kimball as the great performance space, and if you don't do enough in the other performance space, you're not going to take any of the load off of Kimball. So, for instance, if it doesn't have a fly loft, the other high school musical probably isn't going to happen there. If it doesn't have an orchestra pit, the other high school musical isn't going to happen there. You know, other performing groups use Kimball for a reason, and it isn't just the size of the audience.
Again, I regurgitated a little bit of this, but can we maybe just get into a little bit of specifics in terms of a lobby? Again, first and foremost, it's congregation. We've seen a lot of great examples of fundraising events taking place within these spaces. And then often there's dinner events that occur either post-show or before the show. Additionally, day-to-day school usage, depending on where this is within the building, this might be a bit of a space that's accessible to the students as a bit of a commons or congregation type area. Or we can keep it extremely separate, and like you saw with the Ashwaubenon example, I don't believe they allow students in this space if there's not something happening in the auditorium. So maybe just talking a little bit of goals for the lobby, either from maybe starting with the subject matter experts. What would you see, kind of how that would function and be used?
All those events, including some space probably for an art gallery, because I've seen lots of stages out east, you know, school auditoriums out east that have that space there, and or an attached experimental theater where smaller combos, etc., play, or there's, you know, stand-up comedy or whatever, that type of thing.
One of the most important things that people always overlook in the lobbies, because you don't see it, is nobody has restrooms that are big enough.
Right.
For instance, during Miss Wisconsin, if we have the whole 1,400 seats sold, intermission has to last a half an hour. There isn't any way around it, because we have like 8 stalls. So I would suggest that not only have we have enough restrooms, but they be in different locations, so that if there is a balcony, for instance, it has its own restrooms.
If you were to host a dinner event, how many people do you think you would be hosting with that? Again, I would say none of these lobbies could accommodate 1,000, and to build a 1,000-seat serving area would probably be.
I don't think anybody would be interested in having a dinner for 1,000 in the auditorium. If you were looking at a couple of hundred, maybe that would be the tops. And there's also not any need to have any kind of food service or amenities or kitchenettes or anything. Oshkosh is full of wonderful caterers. We use a bunch of them at the Grand. They're great.
I know Winneconne uses theirs for like prom, like they have some events in there, so I could see it being kind of like a cool flex space for different smaller school events, or like even like an improv night or some of the like more small theater things. It could even serve as like a little like acoustic like coffee shop type performance space, depending on the needs of the school. But having a little bit of flexibility would be really cool.
Might not be bad to also do community venue assessment to maybe put something in there that's not at the thing, the Beckett's, Howard, the Culver Center, the Grand Convention Center, the Waters, like,
Where's the gap?
I've had people that contact me that are asking to do, politicians coming through wants to have something, but they're looking for different things. I don't know what somebody would say if only one of these places had, this, and some of it might be ADA things that would be knocked out anyway, but it might not be a bad idea to look at, talk to CVB or somebody else about where the demand is for something that doesn't exist at our existing facilities, a lot of them, because they've been renovated, aren't original, or even talking to like the Alumni Center about what they wish they had done, because I think that's one of the closer things. They don't have a performance space there, but they do have a lobby space that I think is nice and that's been used for galas and things.
The music hall at the university is used that way sometimes. I've actually eaten dinner in there before performances, and it's sort of nice. And of course, they have a food service that you have to use, but it is pretty nice. It isn't a very large space. You don't have a lot of people, but as you said, I don't think you need a lot of people.
I agree, but I wouldn't want to sacrifice the loft or the orchestra pit
Oh,
or
no, I'm not saying
1,000
that.
plus seats, yeah.
I'm not suggesting that.
No,
I'm
no.
talking about the lobby.
Right.
We're talking only about the lobby.
Yeah.
The lobby's completely.
Another high-end facility that has a balcony and a lot of seats is the Sharon Lynn Wilson Center for the Arts in Brookfield. It's just a lovely facility. So, and they have touring shows that come in there. I mean, it's
Mr. Singer, we did do a coffee house. Yeah. It was freshman year. We did a coffee house thing in the old room.
Right, the West
That was
Bands.
a nightmare. I mean, we were crammed in
Yes,
there.
the West
Is that why
Bands
you didn't do it again?
have done that. We've done a coffee house style performance, sometimes just for jazz band, or sometimes we've done it for our freshman chamber ensemble unit in the O room at West, and it's madness to try to do it in that space.
Yeah.
We no longer do that. That's something
Is that the reason though? Because, I mean, that was really tight.
There's various reasons, but that's one of the reasons. It worked great. We did some jazz concerts in there, so it was just jazz band, so the audience capacity wasn't real high, and that was really nice for that. But for various reasons, just we don't have those things operating right now. We're not doing that unit the same way. The jazz band's not currently operating like that. So, yeah, we haven't done it.
If, one of the things you want to look at, if you are considering something like that by doing small performances in the lobby area, is what the acoustic treatment of the lobby is. For instance, the O room is an extremely hard room.
Yes.
It has all glass and tile and walls, and the reverberation is amazing. But so if you were thinking about that, a lot of lobbies have a lot of window, which would not be conducive really to some kind of performances.
Sure. All right, I'm gonna try to shoot through this discussion again, without getting too much into the minutia of the details, but again, the next 3 pages sort of show various types of fly lofts. So again, this shows what we would consider a fly loft, which is right around 50, those can get higher. Most high schools are somewhere in the 55, 60 ish range. And again, I apologize, subject matters, if I'm oversimplifying this, but sort of for the group at large, the basic goal with this is that we can take a set, so again, whatever, production is being played, that set can rise up into this space and get completely out of view. So that, the height, again, I know that's a gross oversimplification for it, but that's kind of the goal for the height, is that we're able to rise up a set, get it out of view, lower the next set, and so forth. So that the volume there is more or less kind of a function of that. So, and again, I apologize, I'm completely oversimplifying it, but that's kind of what and again, I apologize, this is a slice through a building, so cutting through the building, and again, kind of looking at the height of the stage. You can see the seating kind of coming up, but again, kind of focusing on this. The pit that we described, again, a full pit, there's a back set of stairs, I think someone mentioned, you can kind of access on the back side of the stage, you come down, access under, and with access to the pit here. There generally is an elevator somewhere back there as well, to provide handicap accessibility. It does not sound like we are going, maybe going this direction, but there's also, we call it a modified loft, but sometimes there are lesser height ones. Again, the problem here is you have a set and you're pretty limited, right? We have no space really to get that full set out of the way, so they have to be very creative, whether they break it up into small chunks or, again, so this is more, I'd say a little more along the lines of a musical performance, more so than, again, a high quality theatrical type loft consideration. And then this one would be, again, really no fly at all. This would be purely a musical performance. So just, again, a very, very brief, oversimplified version of kind of different types of stages as we look at them in that profile shape. Again, anything, I apologize, I'm grossly oversimplifying that, but any other feedback from our experts? I think
Is there any thought to dressing rooms or storage space beneath the stage and doing what we've sometimes called a trap stage? It doesn't have to be removable, but.
The challenge with that then is we need 2 full-size stairs to provide egress out of there. If we just utilize 1 full-size stair, and like I said, we can usually get our second means of egress out of the pit with a simpler ladder type thing. So we do end up saving a little bit of space. It's certainly something we consider. Generally going down doesn't always save money in terms of cost. So we tend to see things as much up on the upper level as possible.
Do we know, I don't know, is Bray doing the new Neenah High School and what they're doing with the auditorium?
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if you can speak to
details of that, I believe it's a full fly, I believe it's a full pit. I'm not specifically working on it, but I think it's a very high quality performance back.
And my understanding is it's around that 800 number as well.
Okay.
I can bring back more information on that if you'd like next time.
They'll still be using Pickard Auditorium, which is about 1,500 pounds, 1,600?
1,600, yeah.
Yeah, I believe in converting that to a middle school, they're keeping that space, yes. Just, again, a couple quick pictures. We don't tend to take a lot of marketing photos of kind of the nuts and bolts of the auditoriums. In this particular case, we did a couple. This is Sun Prairie, the original high school, so you can kind of catch a little bit of a glimpse of the balcony here. This is all of the rigging that exists on one side of the stage. This is the orchestra shell kind of in the stored position. You might be able to kind of catch there's a spiral staircase here that takes you up to some of the loading bridges and up to the walking grid itself. But again, kind of seeing all of the kind of complexity backstage. Again, another example of the rigging that exists on the back wall. This actually does show the pit cover off. So in this case, you can kind of see down into the pit itself for a performance. I believe this is a trap door, which I think is also maybe off at this time, or I don't know why it's sort of illuminated as distinctly as it is. But again, that fly also services to hold our lighting. It also services to hold the acoustical shell ceiling pieces that tip up and then get raised and lowered up into that the loft space. So again, just showing some of the inner workings of the backstage, the back of house area of the stage. This is again another drawing, again showing kind of a section cut. So this is our fancy architectural drawings. You can see a couple different loading bridges. In this case, they did have a walkable grid up here. Again, without getting into too much technical terms, but the walkable grid does allow for the theater people to get up there to inspect the rigging, to change some things out as needed. This is showing those acoustical clouds that raise up and then drop down into place that form that acoustical shell. And here you can see the orchestra pit with the, in this case, the little ladder getting you out. This doesn't show the stair, which is kind of cut, just a little glimpse of the stair here. So again, I know there's a lot more to that, but kind of in kind of keeping things moving along a little bit. Transitioning to the orchestra pit. So again, trying to provide some pictures or generalizations of kind of what this looks like. Again, the picture to the left, kind of standing out in the audience. We see this, the pit cover is on in this case. These little slatted sections here are open so that when the orchestra is or band is playing down there, the sound can come out the front of the stage. This is a removable cover, so you can kind of see the structure here that this panel can come off and the pit can be opened. Again, you can kind of see it that direction here. And then again, the secondary stair to get out of the space as well. So this is a full, kind of a full lowered pit where this exists and is open or available all of the time. In the case of Winneconne, they did do kind of a modified pit, so their pit comes up quite a bit more, and it's not an occupiable space, with the cover on, because there's little posts that come down, and so it's not an occupiable space. A full pit like this would be occupiable anytime. Again, going really quickly here, I know there's a ton of details, subject matter experts, any thoughts on pits or additional feedback here?
The only feedback I have is a pit is necessary. Because if we build an auditorium at North without a pit, then North isn't going to be able to do the show there. People have suggested you could do a remote pit, like have the pit in the band room, and then it's all mic'd and brought in through the soundboard. I think that I've done that before. It doesn't give you the same experience. The kids don't have the same experience. The audience doesn't have the same experience, and you rely on technology that sometimes fails. And then you have to buy lots of more technology, and the pit's necessary.
I played a show in the Winneconne pit a couple weeks ago, and it wasn't fun. It was a little small, and I was kind of like under the stage, kind of like this. So
I'm assuming there's code differences the deeper you go. I mean, is that why? Cost, obviously.
It was more cost. Again, we were able to do Winneconne without the elevator, without a full set of stairs. There's just one, one way in and out. So in their case, it was a bit of a cost thing to limit it to that. Yeah. So.
I mean, looking at the costs, very large theaters have elevator pits that then access a storage room underneath the stage, so you get another 1,000 square feet of storage by being able to bring stuff up and down on the pit. I'm not sure that's cost effective, but it works great. In fact, as I understand it, Kimball was originally designed that way, and they ran out of money, so instead of finishing off the storage under the stage, they filled it full of dirt.
All right, well, Nate's going to kind of run through a couple different, again, kind of bubble diagrams, kind of looking at some option concepts.
Yeah, and so not to ignore the needs that are necessary at West High School, but I think when we had met with the districts prior, what we wanted to talk about maybe in a high level today is specific to the North solution. So we're going to show you two plan options. They're in your booklets as well for you to review. This does have a square footage kind of tied to the 800 roughly, 850 seat auditorium. So if we do decide to grow that, obviously things will change slightly. But the first option really is taking a good portion of the current auditorium here at North, removing 8,000 square feet of the building, kind of cutting out a notch of it, if you would think about the true seating space in the North Auditorium, removing that portion of the building, and then nestling in the Auditorium Seating, which would have the restroom, office, tickets, coat check, associated, kind of like that big volume that is the auditorium space. And then that would be considered an addition to this building, with a stage, which would be to your west, as north is to the left here, with a scene shop adjacent to the stage, dressing rooms over on the left side, and then a public-facing lobby to the south, as this would be obviously quite the eye pop from the street. So connection to both corridors in the main portion of the building, and I guess kind of replacing the footprint that is currently there. We can come back to that, but jumping ahead, a second option would be to more or less leave the footprint of the building alone. Now, something could be done of this space. There's been a couple of comments related to an experimental space, like we're seeing a little bit of movement into kind of a black box theater. And so the new high schools, it's more of a small, intimate space, 120 seats for a smaller space. It could be turned into something like that. It could be a need perspective from what North High School needs as a whole. How does, if an auditorium gets attached to this building and we don't tear this down, what else can go into that space that would further help this facility? So really, we're just going to highlight this area as blue as a renovation, as if an auditorium was put on this building, you wouldn't need that as its current situation. It also could be looked at that existing space is just freshened up, similar to what we saw at the, I believe it's Port Washington. As far as an addition goes, at this, in this option 2 per se, overall scheme is relatively the same, a lobby towards the south end facing the street, turning the auditorium to lessen the projection into the parking lot, which obviously reduction of parking stalls and things like that we need to be cognizant of. Again, an auditorium with restrooms, office tickets, 850 seats in this configuration, large stage to the north. Dressing rooms, green room kind of flips inwards a little bit here in this hypothetical situation, creating a corridor between the addition and the existing building, which would then access all of those storage rooms. Again, that nice lobby, and then the scene shop towards the north end. So really trying to keep it right from a public perspective to more private, kind of back of the house items. Connectivity, again, through both corridors, as that would tie in this plan option. So I went through those both quickly. There's numbers associated to these, right? So like everything, this footprint here is roughly a 30,000 square foot addition, with this blue area highlighted as roughly 11,000 square feet of renovation. The previous one, if you're curious, a similar size addition, 28,000 square feet. That's removing 8,000 square feet of the existing building, and then roughly 3,000 square feet of renovation associated to that. So the numbers do flush out pretty well. It's just a matter of, I guess, one, if we decide to go with a larger auditorium, and two, kind of, there's pros and cons to each as far as adjacencies to parking lots, student access, parking lot, and then the lobby for public access. Any questions or comments on these kind of schematic diagrams?
My first thought for both of those is just as things get designed and down to details, we need to think about getting equipment from the band room, the orchestra room, the choir room, from those rooms to the stage to make sure the pathing is easy enough and that doors are wide enough, etc., so that there's a clear path down the hallway, turn, go to the stage, something like that. Or maybe it's through the scene shop to the stage. Because I've seen auditoriums around that there's no easy way. Some have to go through the house and then lift it up the stage.
Right.
So it's just a consideration to think about.
Absolutely. Yeah. What starts with the T?
The timpani.
Timpani, thank you. The 40-inch door is what I've measured as minimum size to get one of those pieces through.
Yes.
So ideally a 4-foot door, right? Then there's no.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we're well versed in that, and we would do our best to accommodate that. Thank you. Any other comments?
What's the net amount of square feet between the two? Because option 2 is larger, right?
Yeah, option 2 from an addition perspective is larger, so 30,000 square feet. Hypothetically, if you choose to leave the current auditorium as is, I mean, you don't have to count that 11, but you know, the other one, if you were to nestle it into the building, overall, it is a smaller square footage.
So that one's about 10,000 square feet smaller, that option, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Obviously, size of theater will be a conversation going forward, but anything I'm missing from these layouts? Okay. Well, I think next we are slotted to kind of go through a small group assignment. So if you're sitting alone, jump over to another table. We'll take
Five or so minutes.
Yep. And if you were able to discuss with your peers at your table, there's a discussion 1 column. Just write any notes that we talked about and just brainstorm within the table. So a couple of things that just to think about as Kickstarters. Are the needs / goals identified for this facility? Does the options solve the needs and goals? Again, maybe specifically towards the north, but if additional west comments are in your mind, please jot those down as well. And then what other programmatic needs should be included or considered?
One of the other systems,
Yeah.
which are a lot cheaper, don't require fixing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, these are just kind of
Oh, no, I'm talking about Ireland.
it's very, they're very generalized at this point in time.
Oh, yeah,
All right.
UWGB has.
Again, if you want to maybe share out 2 or 3 tidbits from your individual groups. So we'll start with this table.
You know, I think it'd be helpful, like with all of these, to know kind of how many students are participating in the activities for these different facilities that we're looking at, you know, to give the community some context of, you know, how many students it affects in a given school year. You know, I just think that would be helpful as you get that far. I think that'll be needed. One simple thing would be helpful. Most of us have probably at some point been in Alberta Kimball. I don't know how many people have been in the auditorium here. I think it'd be helpful to see the difference, given we're here in the building.
We did think on kind of the way out, if anyone wants to tour it, I'm
Yeah.
sure that you guys would be happy to open the doors.
It's open, there's a code meeting in there tonight, so it's open.
Okay.
There's a code meeting though at 6,
Okay.
so.
And then maybe just one simple thing I think we talked about, but kind of like at Schwabenon, I think, you know, whatever method would be done here, have it so that there's a lockdown between the school and the auditorium when appropriate, so that capability is there for events, so people can't wander the halls or vice versa.
I'm gonna skip our subject matters, looking back at you guys. You'll go to this table.
You know, just like, yes, definitely do a performing arts center at North. As we rebuild schools, let's make sure we have performance space. Make sure there's adequate storage, concession space should be a consideration, and make sure North is kind of a standalone space so that when North gets reworked, we're not bulldozing it again.
One other thing that we mentioned is equity. So we spent a lot of time and effort discussing go big with the athletic facilities. Let's keep that momentum going when we're talking about PAC.
2 or 3 things came up here. One, of course, was demographics. What will our city look like in 10, 15, 20 years as far as populations? You know, young folks or, you know, continue to get older. The second one, if this is, let's say we build the theater here, does that mean North gets October, November, and then West, to have a perfect place, gets to use it in February and March for their place and things? I mean, how will that be orchestrated? Or is it just North gets to have the very good theater and the modified theater at Alberta Kimball, and West, you know, the equity thing? And then the third thing is my thoughts, and I just reflected. I've been here for 42 years, and over time, not science, but things I heard early on, professionals, people coming into town, let's live in Neenah and drive to Oshkosh, because Neenah University is, much better than Oshkosh Public Schools. That's sarcastic. But if Neenah is building, and Gordon mentioned too, is this going to be an arms race? Well, maybe yes. You hear such great things about Winneconne now. Do we want new people coming into town to say, hey, I'm moving here, I'm working here, and I want to live here and have my children be educated?
Right.
It already is an arms race. Kimberly makes no mistake about it. They built their athletic facility to draw in more
Yes.
than athletes.
Yep.
They have said that. So it already is happening.
It's been an arms race for
The
years.
Webster Auditorium is the Wrigley Field, it's the classic.
I wrote down also, it's my comment, do we want to go with a Ford or a Chevy, or do we want to go a little bit higher? I like Ford and I like Chevy, okay?
Yeah, and the distinction with an auditorium, the Ford and Chevy or Cadillac, is a lot of that's the stuff the public will never see, right? It's
Correct.
the
Yeah.
lighting systems
Agreed.
and audio systems, and so you'll know when you're in the space that I'm getting a really high quality performance. It sounds great, it looks amazing, but it's not physical space necessarily that's creating that. Sorry.
I'll wait until we get to our group.
Okay.
We said the same, if we're going to do this, the seating capacity, go bigger, if we're going to do it right. We don't get a second chance, or it's going to be many years before it happens again. We like the options of having an area for a dinner event for a couple hundred. Again, we don't necessarily see it right now, but it would open the door for so many other opportunities that we have to keep thinking to the future of what it possibly could be. And then a good number of restrooms, definitely. Yes, this one was pit. Yes to the pit. It is. It's needed, and don't go less on that also.
Well, now it's our turn.
Sure.
You guys first.
You have 5 minutes.
Get the stopwatch.
We want to get out of the mindset of thinking that the proposals here are bells and whistles. Those are essential parts of a functioning performance space. An up-to-date lighting system, up-to-date sound system, cable TV so you can cue people, etc. A decent lobby, enough restrooms. No, those aren't bells and whistles. That's the essential part of making this space work. That would be no different than building a football field 80 yards long, because that's really tough.
I have an interesting story about when North was built, and the auditorium was was about half done. And I think some of the people in the administration realized that there might be an issue. And they called a friend of mine who was at the time a professor at the university in the theater department and asked him to come over and give them his opinion. His opinion was get a wrecking ball.
Oh. And that was 50 years ago.
Yes.
We still have it.
It's nothing yet.
So to give a little more input, so thinking of this as a district space, as in a community space, those are two essentials, but we should also think of this as drawing in outside performances. Because this could bring money in to the district. For example, Kohler High School has an older auditorium. It's not very big. They keep it up and it's very well done. And I've seen some very famous people at that auditorium. I saw Leslie Odom Jr. perform there. He was one of the stars of the original cast of Hamilton. I saw Audrey McDonald perform there. She's the person who's won the most Tony Awards ever. Those type of things we could bring into Oshkosh, into these spaces. And not just these big famous names, but we could bring in other things that people are renting it. We already have the pageants coming into Kimball. There could be more things like pageants and dance recitals and touring artists coming in that would pay to use our facility.
We need to have somebody running the facility if we're gonna do that, too. That has to be part of it, because it can't be the rec department, because we're talking about the rec department running this athletic facility too. They can't possibly do both. It's just too much. all of those, at Schwabenon, all of those big spaces have an auditorium manager. That is that person's job.
All right. Well, with the last few moments here, again, we kind of brought forth this criteria once again. Again, we, I think on the surface anyway, I'm going to skip through this. You know, on the surface, we've really kind of discussed this as a solution for North High School. So, again, kind of looking through code, again, we're going to kind of have the same situation. We don't necessarily think it's as much of a problem here because hopefully we're utilizing a lot of the existing parking that we have on site currently. Again, as this sort of plugs into the site, just to kind of give you a little bit of a frame of reference, we are encroaching a little bit on the parking lot, but again, we're not, this is the scenario where we're building completely separately onto the building. So as we potentially look at this, this is taking some parking spots away currently that exist, but it's not a tremendous burden on the site overall in terms of losing a large swath of parking. So maybe with just our little bit of our remaining time here, so Ken, do you think people will still be able to tour? Does the event go at 6? I'm sorry. Jackie. You said there's an event at 6 in the auditorium? 6. So then we can't get in there anymore?
Well, it's too late now.
Okay.
Sorry.
I guess even if we left.
So you can walk on.
Yeah, even if we left now, we probably won't. But with the 5 or so minutes, you know, again, is the attachment to North High School the best solution? I know we talked, you know, there was a lot of comments from the feedback last time of, you know, maybe building this as part of a big facility somewhere else. I don't know, subject matter experts, I mean, from your guys' perspective, this really should be connected to North, right?
I know that Kimball gets a lot more usage from West High School than it does from North High School because it's a real pain to bring all the students over, all the scenery, instruments, whatever you need to do a show. If it's in a different facility, is going to stifle that kind of use.
Yeah, I think there's enough good examples where, again, whether it's at Schwabenon, Slinger, some of those others where, I mean, the building was specifically built to have a separate entrance, have a very distinct separation from the rest of the school. It can still function that community fashion without being part of or allowing access to the rest of the school. So again, I just wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit because I think there were a lot of comments from last time of let's build everything kind of at potentially one location. And, you know, again, I think there's a lot of need that this should be connected and we lose that opportunity. So, all right. Well, with that, again, in 2 weeks, so we're back on our 3 weeks?
No, 3 weeks.
Oh, gosh, okay. Yeah, that's right, this is move to March 21st. So our next one's at March 21st.
28th.
28th, it's 28th.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we moved it because
look at your table.
Oh, there we go. So I got it right here. All right, March 28th, we're back. And we'll talk budget. We'll bring some updated options. We'll spend a little time looking at Kimball for some solutions there. And then, again, talk site a little bit more.
I mean, I guess I'm still kind of stuck on this. Does it make sense to fix Kimball, or do we wait till we have a new high school? I mean, what are we talking about at this point? Because we're like 10 years now, we're saying, until West gets done. Are we fixing Kimball before that?
And then bulldozing it.
Well, or do we leave Kimball where it is and build around it? Maybe it comes the other way. Maybe West goes the other way, where the parking lot is, and you know what I mean?
We should decide or make a recommendation.
I don't know that, I think what I'm hearing is Kimball can't wait another 10 years. Right? I mean, I'll say this.
Well, Kimball's been there for 50 years. 60 years, I'm sorry, I've only been there for 50 years. And it fulfills its function very well. It doesn't have any, currently, any amazing problems. You know, if it had to go another 10 years as the major performance area for the district, it could, with some, you know, minor repairs or inputs without even expanding the lobby or something like that. It is functional.
I mean, of all the things my kids did in high school, the best thing they did was band. You know, and they've done Global Academy, AP, CAP, everything, you know. But that's I mean, it was a game changer. And Luke played a ton of sports, but he got a music scholarship. So he's still in band, but he played football, he wrestled, baseball, track, you know, but in the end, he got a music scholarship. It's because of those two guys. I mean, you know, it's just, I would hate to see us skimp on that. Those high school music performances are amazing.
I guess my point is that if you are planning on bulldozing Kimball, don't put a lot more money into it.
Yeah.
Right.
Make the next one really
the
amazing.
question.
I think we definitely need to address that issue, because we don't want to ask the community for money and then have them use that as I guess as an attack point on us later when we decide we're gonna tear that down. I mean, I've already heard people complain about the money put into the windows at West when there's plans for rebuilding that school. I'm sorry, like, even 10 years, you get cost savings from energy, but it's still not great for us to leave ourselves open to that.
So that's, if you had to, in a nutshell, put what part of what this committee is about is having that discussion. Because that's really a big piece of what the school board wants from you, is a recommendation of, you know, you have to put your mind in the head of the voters in this community. You're representing 70, 80,000 people here, and trying to figure out, okay, what does the community want from these spaces? And that's a great question. You know, what do we do? Do we, you know, do some tweaking to West to fix the biggest issues, and then wait until, you know, phase 3 to actually hit it hard? That's one of the great questions we were hoping people would wrestle with and ask.
So if West is bulldozed and a new high school is rebuilt, would Kimball stay? Or when you were talking, we're gonna bulldoze West, and it includes bulldozing Kimball?
That's the question. I think it's a future discussion when we get to that phase.
Yeah, it's a future discussion, but I think we also want to think about the comments that we heard tonight about the fan shape, about the different things that are an issue associated to Kimball that couldn't be resolved without tearing it down. So you gotta kind of take all pieces of the pie here and put it together.
Several years ago, many years ago, one of the superintendents asked me what it would cost to turn Kimball into a, quote, state-of-the-art performance center. I told him. He never mentioned it again. But there are problems with Kimball that tweaking aren't going to cure.
Such as?
Well, the fan shape, the acoustics, the fly loft, you know, it's close, but no cigar. The new sound system is nice, and the lighting system is nice, and needs more instruments. I mean, where do we stop throwing money at it, I guess? The lobby, it doesn't have anywhere near enough bathrooms. It would seem to be silly to spend, you know, $300,000 expanding the lobby for 10 years. I don't know.
Well, and that's another situation you have to think of. The more money you spend on Kimball, the more likely it is you're going to be living with that for a long time, even when there is a new high school wrapped around it. So that's just something. It's a good thing we have 3 weeks between this meeting and the next meeting.
And if we worry too much about Kimball right now, there's nothing here. There's nothing here.
Right.
So,
right.
I think we have a clear, in my mind, we have a clear path ahead of us. If there were a few things we could do to tweak Kimball, that'd be fabulous, but if not, well, It's, as you say, it's usable.
I have a question concerning process and the timetable here.
Yep.
What if we have an idea about the athletics, or, you know, now or in 2 weeks we have some more, who should I speak to about ideas I may have?
You can speak to any of us, you can write them down at any of the meetings, you don't have to just hold your comments for one.
I'll speak with you then.
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
talk
I'll
about
stick
that.
around after if you
You
want.
bet.
So, I think what you're saying is, we don't fix Kimball now, we wait until we
I
do
am
the high
definitely
school.
not saying that. I am not a member of the committee.
Because I wouldn't say you do one over the other, we do it like the athletic thing, right? You put it together. You would do Kimball and North, because you're doing a performance art, fixing performance arts in the.
As one of the West teachers who uses Kimball in that space all the time, I think our priority needs to be North. Because we've learned to deal with the shortcomings we have,
Okay.
and North has had a much bigger problem. So if 8-10 years down the line, we're talking new West High School, we can deal with a lot of those shortcomings at that time, in my opinion.
Okay, so I have another question. Are we trying to replicate what's at Kimball here? No. It's too big, right?
We want to do it right.
Do it right.
We want to do it right.
Do it right here.
So it's not just about the seating capacity?
No. You need to see it before you said you've never been in it.
No, I'm not talking, yeah, I don't need to. I trust these people. I've heard the bad things already about this place.
Yes, but seeing is believing.
All right, so we have a little bit of stuff to think about for the next few weeks, and we'll see you on the 28th.